Let's talk about the moment you thought would never happen. You gave him your time, your attention, your energy, maybe even parts of yourself. You didn't give anyone else. You were real, open, vulnerable. And then one day, nothing. Silence, no closure, just a ghost where a connection used to be. It hurts, not just because he left, but because of how he left. Without explanation, without honesty, without the decency to say goodbye. Now listen to me carefully. This is where everything changes. First, stop chasing. You're not chasing clarity. You're chasing validation. You're trying to make sense of something that doesn't deserve your energy. When someone ghosts you, they're not showing you how little they care about you. They're showing you how little they know how to handle you. So take your power back. Do not text. Do not stalk. Do not send that one last message. You don't owe them that. Second, remind yourself of this truth. You were the prize. Just because he didn't claim the prize doesn't mean it lost its value. You brought your whole self, the warmth, the loyalty, the softness, the fire. If he couldn't handle that, that's not your shame, that's his limitation. Third, use this as a filter. Don't let this break you. Let it build you. Ghosting is cowardice in disguise. It's someone who wants the benefits of connection without the responsibility of commitment. From now on, only those who can communicate, who can stand in the truth, who can handle you, get access to you. Fourth, shift the narrative. This isn't a story about someone who left. This is a story about someone who couldn't keep up with you. You didn't lose him. He lost you. And last, let your silence speak. The most powerful response is no response. Go level up, heal, grow, get stronger, get softer, but with boundaries. Let him check your stories and wonder what happened to that woman he once knew. Let him realize too late that he had gold in his hands, and he dropped it. Because you're not here to convince anyone to see your worth. You're here to be seen by the one who already does. You didn't lose him, he lost you. And I don't mean that in a throwaway, motivational quote kind of way. I mean it as a truth you need to feel in your bones, because right now, your heart might be whispering a different story. You're probably sitting there wondering what you did wrong, what you could have done differently, whether you were too much or not enough. You're replaying the last conversations, the energy shift, the withdrawal, the silence. You're trying to reverse engineer closure from a situation that gave you none. And that ache in your chest, that emptiness, that's not because you lost someone irreplaceable. It's because your brain is grieving the story it was building, not the person who left. You showed up. You gave your love with sincerity. You made space for him emotionally. You remembered the little things, supported his dreams, laughed at his jokes, even when they weren't that funny. You brought effort, consistency, vulnerability. In a world full of half-hearted connections and emotionally avoidant people, you showed up whole. That's not something everyone does, and that matters. That means something. So when I say you didn't lose him, I mean that from a place of logic, but also of truth. Because someone who ghosts you, someone who disappears without communication, someone who avoids adult conversations in favor of vanishing acts, that person isn't someone who's capable of receiving what you had to give. What he lost wasn't just your presence, it was your potential. The long nights where you listened without judgment, the random texts that made his day, the way your eyes lit up when you spoke about the future and included him in it, the way you rooted for him when he wasn't even sure of himself. These aren't small things, these are rare, they're sacred. And when he walked away without a word, he didn't just exit your life. He removed himself from something that had depth, loyalty, and potential. But the pain you feel right now might try to trick you. It might convince you that his exit means you weren't enough. It might push you into self-doubt, get you scrolling back through old messages to find the exact moment where everything started to go wrong. Let me stop you right there. His inability to show up wasn't caused by your intensity, your standards, or your softness. It was a result of his own limits. You didn't scare him off. You didn't give too much. You were just more than what he was capable of handling. And yes, there are people who are intimidated by love when it's real, who run when things become emotionally available, who disappear not because something is wrong with you, but because something is unresolved in them. There are two kinds of people in this world, those who rise to meet healthy love, and those who retreat from it. He chose to retreat. That's not on you, that's his story to live with. And that's the key here. He didn't leave with something better. He simply stepped away from something he couldn't process, understand, or hold. And in doing so, he lost something deeply valuable. He lost a woman who would have shown up for him, who would have grown with him, who would have stayed, not because she had to, but because she chose to. He lost your consistency, your loyalty, your light. You didn't lose him, you lost the illusion of him, the fantasy of who you hoped he could be, the potential you saw, the connection you thought was real. And that hurts, yes. But it also frees you, because now you're no longer investing energy in someone who was emotionally unavailable, or only half in. Now you get to redirect that energy back to yourself, to the parts of you that gave, to the love inside you that remains, unshaken, even after being mishandled. So let him go. Let him scroll in silence. Let him tell himself whatever story he needs to about why he disappeared. But you keep your head high, because you showed up with real love, and he couldn't meet it. And that right there is not your loss. That's his. Silence is power, not punishment. And that distinction is everything, because when someone ghosts you or pulls away, the instinct to respond is almost immediate. You feel the urge to explain yourself, to reach out and ask what went wrong, to fill the silence with words, hoping that something you say will shift the outcome. But the truth is, not every silence needs to be filled. Some silences are sacred. They're not cold or cruel. They're a boundary, a mirror, and most importantly, a reclamation of self-respect. When someone walks away without explanation, they create a space. That space can either become a playground for self-doubt, or a sanctuary for self-healing. The difference lies in what you choose to do with it. If you fill that space with desperate messages, overthinking, and attempts to make them care, you hand over your power. But if you sit in that silence, if you let it speak instead of trying to drown it out, you reclaim your strength. Silence isn't about ignoring someone or trying to hurt them. It's not about being cold or manipulative. It's about recognizing that someone who can't respect you enough to communicate does not deserve the energy of your response. Silence becomes the boundary that says, I'm not going to engage with behavior that devalues me. It's the quiet way of saying, I saw what you did, and I'm choosing me over the chaos you brought. There's something deeply powerful in not reacting. In a world that's constantly telling us to explain ourselves, to be available, to make things right, choosing silence can feel radical. It's not passive, it's not weak. It's intentional, because silence forces accountability without confrontation. It makes the other person sit with their actions. It removes the distraction of your energy and attention, and in doing so, it forces them to feel the weight of their own choices, without the comfort of your reaction softening the blow. When someone disappears on you or treats you like an option, your silence doesn't go unnoticed. People might not respond to your presence, but they feel your absence. They feel it when the texts stop, when the check-ins end, when the emotional support they once had access to is no longer there. And the mind, when left with unanswered questions, does something interesting. It starts searching for meaning. The very silence you're holding becomes the loudest thing in the room, and that's when they begin to wonder, not just about what happened, but about what they lost. Silence gives you time to recalibrate, to come back to yourself. When you stop focusing on what you want to say to them, you begin to hear what your own heart is saying to you. You remember your worth. You rebuild your energy. You learn that your value was never tied to someone's ability to recognize it. And that lesson alone is worth more than any closure you were hoping to get. Silence protects your dignity. There's a point where more words don't bring clarity. They just leak your self-respect. If someone has already shown you they're unwilling or unable to meet you with the same depth you offer, then every message you send after that is a quiet betrayal of your own standards. Silence steps in to say, I won't lower myself to be heard by someone who chose to stop listening. It lets you walk away without begging, pleading, or shrinking. And yes, silence can feel excruciating at first. Because we're wired to connect. We're taught that resolution only comes from dialogue. But some people don't deserve that resolution. Some people teach you more by their absence than they ever could by staying, and your silence becomes the lesson. It becomes the closure. It becomes the reminder that you don't chase people who choose not to see you. Holding your silence isn't easy. It takes emotional strength. But every time you resist the urge to reach out, to explain, to fix, you build a muscle, a boundary, a belief in yourself. You begin to understand that not everything requires a response, not everyone deserves one, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say absolutely nothing at all. Redefine your standards, not to hurt him, but to heal you. When someone ghosts you or treats you like you were disposable after you gave your love, your time, and your energy, it's tempting to respond with bitterness. You might want to prove a point, make him feel what you felt, show him what he lost. But real healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from realignment. It comes from looking at the experience, not through the lens of blame, but through the lens of growth. And that starts with redefining what you accept, what you expect, and what you will never tolerate again. You see, standards aren't just rules you impose on others. They are reflections of what you believe you deserve. They're quiet agreements you make with yourself. And when someone treats you in a way that shakes your sense of self-worth, you have two choices: shrink and settle, or rise and refine. Shrinking means you tell yourself the story that maybe this is all you can get, that maybe love always comes with confusion, inconsistency, or emotional withdrawal. But redefining your standards means rewriting that story entirely. It means deciding that what happened to you won't define what happens next. Maybe for too long, your standards were built around potential, around the hope that if you just gave a little more, loved a little harder, waited a little longer, he would finally show up in the way you needed. Maybe you excused red flags because the chemistry was strong or because the connection felt different. Maybe you confused effort with value, thinking that the more energy you invested, the more he'd see your worth. But now, after the silence, the abandonment, the unanswered questions, you've been given the chance to reevaluate. And while the pain might be raw, it's also revealing. It shows you where you've been compromising, where you've been available to people who didn't earn that access. Redefining your standards isn't about becoming colder or tougher. It's about becoming clearer. It's about choosing people who choose you with clarity and consistency. Not just when it's convenient, not just when it suits their mood. It's about not getting excited by the bare minimum, not mistaking attention for affection, not confusing passion for partnership. It's about knowing that someone who truly wants to be there will not ghost you. They will communicate. They will show up. They will take care of your heart, not just take from it. Healing through higher standards means you start asking better questions. Instead of "does he like me?" you begin to ask, "do I even like how I feel around him?" Instead of "why did he leave?" you ask, "why did I stay when I was already feeling neglected?" This is where the healing begins, not in trying to change him or wish for his return, but in holding yourself to a new level of self-respect. You begin to realize that closure doesn't come from him explaining himself. It comes from you acknowledging your own pattern and committing to breaking it. Raising your standards isn't an act of punishment, it's an act of self-love. You're not doing it to prove a point to him. You're doing it to protect the version of you that gave everything without boundaries. To protect the parts of you that used to settle because you were afraid of being alone. You're choosing peace over patterns, substance over surface, and self-worth over temporary attention. That's not revenge. That's recovery. And this shift isn't loud. It's quiet and internal. It's not about posting quotes or pretending to be unbothered. It's about the deep calm knowing that you will never again hand over your heart to someone who hasn't proven they know how to hold it. It's about saying, "this time, I'm not lowering my standards to keep someone. I'm elevating them to meet someone better." Healing begins the moment you decide that being alone is not worse than being half loved. That silence is better than mixed signals. That your love deserves a home, not a hiding place. And that you are no longer available for people who ghost you, breadcrumb you, or only show up when it's convenient. Redefine your standards, not to show him what he missed, but to show yourself what you've learned. Not to make him feel regret, but to make sure you never again feel that kind of pain without purpose. Turn the heartbreak into a comeback. That might sound like a motivational slogan, but it's far deeper than that. When someone walks out of your life, especially without explanation, without care, without closure, it can feel like your world has collapsed in on itself. You don't just lose the person, you lose the rhythm of your days, the emotional investment, the imagined future. Your identity feels shaken because you gave a piece of yourself to someone who decided not to protect it. But here's where the shift happens: that pain, that emptiness, that disorientation. It doesn't have to be the end. In fact, it can be the beginning of the strongest, most magnetic version of you. Because the same heartbreak that broke you can also build you, if you let it. The comeback doesn't start when they return, or when they apologize, or when you finally get the closure you thought you needed. It starts the moment you stop looking outward for validation and start turning inward for growth. It starts the second you decide that your value isn't up for negotiation, that your story doesn't end in someone else's silence. Every great transformation in life begins in darkness, but it never stays there. And neither will you. Right now your heart might still be raw. You might still be checking your phone, wondering if he'll come back. You might feel rejected, forgotten, even embarrassed that you cared so deeply. But the comeback begins not when you pretend you're fine, but when you allow yourself to feel everything, fully and honestly, and then still choose to rise. Because healing doesn't mean ignoring the pain, it means working with it, letting it fuel you, not define you. This is your rebuild phase, and not in the dramatic cinematic sense. In the quiet daily choices. It's choosing to go for that run, even when your mind says, "What's the point?" It's choosing to unfollow or mute him, because your peace matters more than your curiosity. It's picking up a new book, calling a friend, or spending time alone, not in loneliness, but in self-connection. It's slowly, intentionally proving to yourself that you are not broken, you are becoming. Turning heartbreak into a comeback isn't about revenge. It's not about making them regret losing you. It's about making you proud of how you responded. It's about looking back one day and realizing that what was meant to break you became the very reason you leveled up. Emotionally, physically, mentally. You stopped making excuses for red flags. You started protecting your energy. You learned how to sit with yourself, to comfort your own pain, to be the person you needed someone else to be. And slowly the shift happens. The things that used to trigger you, his name, his posts, his silence, start to lose their power. Not because you stopped caring overnight, but because you started caring more about yourself. The more you invest in your own growth, the more you realize that your story never depended on someone else showing up for it. The more you rise, the more you detach from people who never knew how to meet you where you were. This is where your glow up begins, not just on the outside, but in how you carry yourself. In the way your energy changes. In the way your presence becomes more grounded, more magnetic, more unshakable. You start to realize that you were never too much. You were just offering depth to someone who only knew how to swim in the shallow end. You weren't abandoned because you lacked something. You were released so you could rediscover everything you forgot you were. And this comeback, it's not loud, it's not petty, it doesn't need an audience. It's the quiet evolution that happens when you stop trying to prove your worth and start living like someone who already knows it. It's the version of you that walks away with grace, even when you had every reason to be bitter. It's the version that holds her head high, not because she's over it, but because she's choosing not to let it define her. Heartbreak may have knocked you down, but now, piece by piece, you're rising. Stronger, softer, wiser. And when people see you again, really see you, they'll feel the difference. Because this isn't just a return to who you were. It's a full arrival into who you were always meant to become. Be unavailable for people who treat you like an option. That's not bitterness, that's clarity. That's understanding that your time, your presence and your energy are not casual offers to be picked up and dropped whenever it suits someone's emotional convenience. Too often we find ourselves waiting in the wings for someone to finally choose us, to finally recognize what we've been offering all along. We answer the late-night texts, we respond to the breadcrumb messages, we forgive the long silences and inconsistent behavior, because part of us believes that if we stay long enough, they'll see our value. But the hard truth is, people rarely value what they don't have to earn. When someone treats you like an option, it's not just about what they're doing, it's about what you're allowing. You may not realize it in the moment, but every time you say yes to being someone's backup plan, you're saying no to being someone's priority. And the longer you stay available for someone who shows up on their terms, the more you teach yourself to settle. You start to normalize inconsistency. You start to tell yourself that mixed signals are just part of modern dating. That emotional unavailability is something you can crack through with enough love, patience, or loyalty. But deep down, you know that your spirit is craving more. Not more drama, more depth. Being unavailable isn't about playing games or pretending not to care. It's about finally acting in alignment with what you truly deserve. It's about looking at someone who gives you just enough to keep you close, but never enough to make you feel secure, and saying, "I'm no longer staying here." It's choosing self-respect over attention, peace over patterns, growth over familiar pain. Because the truth is, being treated like an option is emotional starvation, and it's not romantic to wait around and hope someone eventually chooses to feed you. You weren't put here to be on standby. You weren't meant to be someone's maybe, their convenience, their emotional safety net, when things don't work out elsewhere. Your love is not casual, your presence is not replaceable, and your time is not renewable. The more you recognize the value of what you bring to the table, your loyalty, your insight, your emotional depth, the less interested you'll be in people who can't even show up with a chair. And yes, being unavailable might make you feel alone at first. Because the moment you start raising your standards, the crowd often thins. You stop responding to "what are you doing?" texts at midnight. You stop chasing closure from someone who never intended to give it. You stop over-explaining your needs to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And in that quiet space, it might feel like you've lost something, but what you've actually done is made space for better, for real, for consistent, for someone who doesn't need to be convinced of your worth. Being unavailable to the wrong people makes you magnetic to the right ones. Because when you stop settling for half effort, you make room for wholeheartedness. When you remove yourself from dynamics that drain you, you create space for relationships that energize you. The more unavailable you become to emotional crumbs, the more you attract people who come with the full meal. And here's the beauty of it: the shift doesn't require confrontation. You don't need to send a long paragraph. You don't need to wait for closure. You don't need to explain your worth to anyone. Your unavailability becomes your boundary. Your silence becomes your strength. Your distance becomes your healing. You simply stop showing up for people who don't show up for you. Not out of anger, but out of alignment. You become someone who no longer waits to be chosen, because you're too busy choosing yourself. You're too focused on your own growth, your own peace, your own purpose, to entertain anyone who only wants you halfway. You stop settling for potential and start choosing patterns. You stop hoping for change and start requiring consistency. You stop allowing access to people who haven't earned it. Being unavailable doesn't close your heart, it protects it. It doesn't make you hard, it makes you wise. You're not shutting people out, you're filtering out the ones who never intended to stay. And the ones who are meant for you, they won't need to be chased, convinced, or decoded. They'll recognize your worth and rise to meet it. Heartbreak may shake your world, but it doesn't get to define you. Your response does. When someone ghosts you after you gave everything, your healing begins not in chasing answers, but in reclaiming your power. Silence becomes your strength, not your weakness. Raising your standards isn't revenge, it's recovery. Choosing to be unavailable for people who treat you like an option is not about pride, it's about self-respect. Every moment you choose to rise from pain instead of drowning in it, you turn heartbreak into your greatest comeback. You stop waiting for someone to choose you and begin choosing yourself, unapologetically. This isn't about becoming colder, it's about becoming clear. The version of you that emerges from this isn't hardened, it's refined, more grounded, more intentional. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who failed to see it. You only need to live it. The one who ghosted you didn't break you. They revealed the parts of you still in need of protection, still learning where to set the bar. And now, you rise. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not with games, but with standards. Because the real glow-up is peace. The real revenge is healing. And the real power is knowing you never needed them to begin with.